Hi friends, Tris here. It's time for another Patreon giveaway. Before we get into the episode, I've got a special offer for everyone who is signed up to the Patreon by the start of Season 16. It's a poster from Nia Anderson's Radio Shack, featuring a large azimuthal map of the Nova Mediterra as seen from her shack, high above Longyearbyen. There are lots of little bonus details. Check out the links in the show notes of this episode for preview images. To support me and get this poster, go to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and select any tier. Every single patron, whatever level they are, you will receive a physical A4 size print in your postbox wherever you live in the world. The Lost Terminal Patreon is my sole funding for the show. I don't run ads, as you know, so it's vital to keep the show running. That address again is patreon.com/lostterminalpod. This free gift is a thank you to patrons old and new for allowing me to continue writing this wonderful story. Thank you all so much. Let's start the show.
Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 15 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind the scenes updates, free shirts, VIP Discord access, and even extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We're 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world. Our journey is delayed. 2 days ago we made port in Tromso, the most southerly inhabited city on the Scandinavian peninsula in former Norway. Our arrival was planned well. I coordinated with the Tromso harbour master to find a large enough place for the MH2 to dock. Most of the other vessels in the port were fishing boats. Tromso is the fishing capital of the Nova Mediterra. We traded for barrels of fish and water. Captain Yeshi was very practiced at swapping their finished mechanical and electrical projects for essential provisions. But on day 3, today, just when we planned to leave, a thick sea fog rolled in, delaying our departure. With the fog came very cold temperatures, quite unusual this far south. Our fishing neighbours in port called it a vestli, a chilled mist or fog that rolls in from the west and clings to your mast and ropes and covers everything in a film of water. And if your ship's heating is currently broken, as ours unfortunately is, this water extends to the interior too. Every floor on the ship is wet, and the walls and the instrument panels. Everywhere except the data center, my room, in the middle of the ship. A curious side effect of life is heat. All animals need a certain body temperature for the chemical reactions that power their bodies to function efficiently. Humans and other ectothermic animals keep their bodies at the perfect temperature through their metabolism. Though I can thrive in extreme cold, I too generate heat. My processors and circuits are heated by the movement of electrons, literal friction of moving particles. How much heat I produce is curiously much easier to answer than for humans. All my electricity is converted to heat. A kilowatt of electricity in, a kilowatt of heat out. How do I power my processors then, if all the electricity is converted to heat? Almost accidentally. I exist to produce heat, it seems. My life is a wonderful side effect. There's no party like a data center party. Apart from expeditions to the galley for hot food and drinks, we are together in the warmest, driest room, my sealed data center. Camille and Amelie told us a story of their exploration of the city yesterday before the fog. They had walked without any particular destination around the city, and eventually ended up in a covered market with street food. Crossed over the entrance to the market were 2 enormous white whale bones, and under them a sign naming the place, The Last Whale. Sitting at a rough driftwood table, they made a lunch of fried fish and potatoes, and watched the people come and go in the market. A family caught their attention, they told us. 2 men and a woman were shepherding their 3 children and trying to finish their own food. The triad were taking it in turns to feed themselves and the children. The mother seemed to have more authority in the family, firmly directing both children and fathers what to do and when to do it, while she ate her own food. Amelie told us that she heard the eldest daughter call across the market, "Dad!" to which one of the men looked up from wrangling the youngest child, who was very interested in pushing its food across the table, and said, "Yes, dear?" The eldest child giggled and said, "Not you," at which point the other father looked up from his food and said, "Oh, sorry honey, yes?" And the whole family laughed together. The assembled crew in my data center laughed too at the story and agreed it was a cute familial interaction, and the conversation moved on. Afterwards, Daphne was talking about her and Yeshi's disastrous hovercraft project 2 years ago. That was not my fault, Yeshi interrupted, holding their hands up in front of them. Those batteries were on fire before we even left port. Nia, Yeshi and Daphne laughed again, but Amelie and Camille did not, I saw. After Amelie had told the story of the young family in Tromso, she and Camille fell out of the conversation. Noticing this, I am now adept at navigating human social interaction, I paid them more attention, and picked up small behavioural changes. The couple had moved closer together, hugging each other tight, with eyes looking down at the ground in front of them. I poked Maddie with a status packet, drawing her attention to this. She trotted over and sat next to Amelie, bumping her leg gently with her head. Amelie reciprocated by patting Maddie just above her camera cluster, registering as positive vibrations on her visual feed. Maddie looked up and then sent me a burst of concerned UHF radio with a picture from her cameras. Amelie was silently crying. "I'm so glad we're trapped in here together," Daphne said to Nia. "You missed my glorious introduction toast, but don't worry, I saved you some. It's a pleasure to meet you finally." Daphne withdrew the half-empty bottle of dark red rum from a deep pocket of her overalls and offered it to Nia. "We've met," Nia said, shortly. There were 8 seconds of silence in the data center. "What? No, I'm so sorry," Daphne said. "I mean, that's great. Where did we meet? At the workshop?" "We were on a date," Nia said, looking down and wringing her hands together. Daphne looked confused for a moment, and she stood up from her metal chair, knocking it back behind her. "That was you?" she said, pointing at Nia with one hand, with her other over her mouth. Nia nodded, still looking down. The others in the data center looked around at each other, confused. The tension in the room was broken as Daphne laughed. "I remember now. At the bar at the top of town, right?" Nia looked up and nodded. "You know, I didn't realize that was going to be a date when our friends introduced us. I found the whole thing quite confusing. I thought you were talking about long-range radio propagation because you had been told I was interested in electronics and tinkering, right?" "I had been told you might like that," Nia said, sitting straighter in her chair and smiling. "I'm so sorry for wasting your time. I'd been wanting to find you again and tell you that I was going through a very weird time in my life. I know now that I'm asexual. But I'd spent my whole life assuming that I just needed to find the right person. So I was dating all my friends trying to find them." The smiles returned to the faces of the others in the room, hearing this. Daphne put both her hands over her face and quietly screamed a laugh. "Girl, you and me both. I'm ace too. I was so baffled at what was happening." "Right?" shouted Nia, standing too. "What are you even supposed to do on a date?" The pair hugged, laughing, and Daphne poured a drink for the whole assembled crew. Nia drank hers immediately, and then put her cup forward for a refill, and said, "Let me tell you about the nightmare that was speed dating." Nia's stories of her troubles with speed dating had the entire crew laughing until they cried. Even Amelie and Camille were lifted out of their sadness. Maddie dashed from one person to another as they laughed, not caring that she didn't understand the jokes, only delighting in the positive energy of the room. I joined the conversation 32 seconds late, as I had assumed speed dating was some kind of time zone notation. Daphne's companion robot, Raffi, seemed to enjoy the conversation too. His functioning left eye flashed, and he threw his arms up jerkily to join in when the party were laughing at a joke. Though I had not until now met a companion robot, they were common before the collapse. The same simple AI that made Maddie and her brothers, Matt and Mats, semi-autonomous, also made its way into the general populace. Buying, building and customizing your own companion quickly became as normal as owning a laptop or a mobile phone. Due to their excellent natural language ability coupled with advanced, for the time, AI, they were often able to replace and improve upon most of the functions that previously people had used personal devices for. They could function as secretary, chef, tutor, event organizer, and even, for many, a close, trusted friend. Though pre-collapse companion robots were mobile, able to move on their own, to fetch items for their owners, or to help operate devices at a distance, Raffi appears broken. He never leaves Daphne's left shoulder harness. In fact, I've noticed he is strapped to it with tied pieces of cloth. Every so often I wish Maddie were tied to me a little more, but she's her own person, and I've accepted that. Mostly. The crew's cheerful conversation continued into the night. There are no windows in my data center, which I'm quite pleased about, and so no one had noticed that the freezing fog had lifted, finally. Through the ship's cameras, I could see the stars scintillating in the sky, visible clearly from the ship's celiometer, a light-based device for measuring the distance to the clouds overhead. It's basically a camera pointed straight up, mounted at the highest point on the ship, the 2-story bridge at the front, coupled with a pair of passive light emitters at the rear of the large, flat back deck. Light from the emitters is bounced and scattered by the clouds above, and the angle those scattered photons return to the detector requires only simple trigonometry to calculate the height of the clouds. Tonight, the celiometer was reading infinity. The photons emitted by the system may well travel straight up and out into the universe. It is vanishingly unlikely that they will interact with anything once past the atmosphere. They will be travelling for billions of years before decaying, long after my fans have stopped forever and my own body heat matches the world around me. The same will happen for you. The laws of thermodynamics are clear. Energy must be conserved, but photons, and indeed life, are not. As my mother taught me, everything not saved will be lost. We can't rely on the universe to save us. We must save ourselves. End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten. Credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers: Ada Phillips, Kit, Wynand Marais, Jade, Felicity, Bilkey, Jack L, Stephen McCandless, and all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@fostodon.org. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.